So good. So good. Worship is amazing. I'll just love worship. Sometimes it's almost like I feel like I don't even need to speak because God's kind of speaking in the service. He's bringing His words and what He wants to say. Yesterday I started playing rugby again. Can you believe it? Actually, it was my second game back. And you know how you get in, thank you. You have this idea, and someone sowed an idea in my mind, and it got stuck, and they said, come along to the game. So it'll be fun, he said. So this is last week, and I go to the game, and it was a game down in Kyoku. I think hopefully said their name. And I'll tell you what, man, I went to make a tackle, and someone else was making tackle at the same time, and he smacked me in the side of my head. And I had a lump on my head. After the game, I had sore shoulders, and I was like, why is my shoulder sore? And I realized because I've been doing some tackling. Because in the summertime, I play American football. And I thought, if I was wearing a helmet and shoulder pads, I'll be fine. But anyway, I played yesterday and I survived. And I've got a sore back, and it wasn't from rugby, it's just the way I woke up this morning. Who gets a sore back just getting out of bed? Right? You might get a sore back getting out of bed. And that's exactly me. And I play for the Prezzies, the presidents. Those are the older guys. They're the nicest rugby team you can play for. Prezzies are so polite to each other. I was running, they passed me while I was running. A guy, he'd hide me, whacked me in my mouth. And as he took me down, he was lying on top of me, and then everybody else piled on top, and he was apologizing. Oh, hey, so sorry about that. I'm like, yeah, no worries, it's all good, it's all good. And then we would get up, and I got penalized. But I was thinking, if I was younger, I'll be like, I'll be saying some other stuff to him, saying, you wait. But I said, hey, it's okay, it's all good, no worries. My teeth are still there, it's fine. It's fine. We get up, shake hands, and walk away. We're so polite when you get older. It's pretty cool. We're doing the series called The Power of One. And I've enjoyed the series. Who's enjoyed the series? The Power of One. It has been really, really good. Our mission is to lead all people into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ. And the Power of One is exactly that. It's giving us tools, helping us make the right decisions, the right choices, whatever invitation, whatever opportunity come your way. It's a tool that as I'm doing the series, I realize that God really does have our best interest in mind. And sometimes we don't have our own best interest in mind. Anybody in my boat, sometimes I have the best interest in mind, but God has His best interest in mind for you. And it's been a great series. And it's interesting because all the series they join together. We started off with the power of one only. And quite often we use our onlys as a reason why we can't move forward in life. I'm only a high school dropout. I'm only a solo mum. I'm only on superannuation. And we use our onlys as excuses, but when we get rid of our onlys and we give it to God, and we put it in the realm where God can use it, and we're about to be able to take ground on every step forward. The next one was the power of one word, and be careful of our words because they have the power to become. And the week after that was the power of one idea, and our words are a catalyst for an idea, because once an idea forms and once it lodges itself up here somewhere, it's hard to remove. So be careful of your words, because they have the power to become. Then last week we spoke about, what did we speak about last week? Anybody remember? The power of one moment. And we all have moments, don't we? Defining moments. Anybody have moments? Some say, I had a moment this morning, but I'm okay now. We all have moments, defining moments. This one we're going to be talking about today it's called the power of one question. Power of one question. And this question that we're going to be discussing and talking about this morning, it's really the ultimate question. It's the one question you really need, the one question that you do need in life. In fact, this question answers all the other questions. It answers everything. And if you come across a defining moment, this one question will help you make the right decision to move forward in life. I'm 40 years old. Yep, I'm saying it. I admit it. I'm 40 years old. My wife said, finally, he finally doesn't think he's 20. Okay. And but when I was 28 years old, which was not long ago, a long time ago, 28 years, still living up in Auckland. We're Aucklanders that way. was living up in Auckland. I had a cold. And so what do you do when you've got a cold, especially when you're working and you need a medical certificate, right? So you have to go to the doctors because you know what the doctors are going to say. You got a cold, you go into the doctors because you need to stay home, you're sick, and the doctors are going to say, take a cup of Panadol and have some rest. That's $30, thank you, okay? But you go anyway so you can get your medical certificate. So I go, I'm not feeling good, got a cold. And I get to the doctors and I tell them I've got a cold, I'm not feeling too good. And I'm thinking, I know exactly what he's going to say. Take a couple of Panadols, have some rest. But you know what he says to me? He says to me, oh, could you jump on the scales? No, I've got a cold. Could you jump on the scales? Jump on the scales, and he goes, and you know what he says to me? He said I'm a beast. I said, I'm a beast? He goes, no, you're in the range of obesity. Oh, I'm a beast. Okay. And then he said to me that if I don't make lifestyle changes in my life, that every year I'm going to put on weight, and eventually I've got a high chance of dying of a heart attack. I'm only 28 years old. I'm invincible. I'm the man. And I wasn't even that heavy. I was only 106 kilos. In South Auckland, that's pretty light. So I was really skinny. Like in South Auckland, I turned sideways, you can't see me. I'm back again. And I was like, because when I was a teenager, who remembers the days when you could eat anything, anytime, just stuffed in your face, you didn't care what you ate? Remember, some of you are like still in that time. But when I was a teenager, and I said, when I get to my 20s, I'll worry about it. When I got to my 20s, what do you say? When I get to my 30s, I'll worry about it. Got to my 30s, what did I say? When I get to my 40s, I'll worry about it. I'm now like 35 years old, and they're giving this free medical test for men. So I go, I'll be interested to see where I am. I thought I'm doing pretty good. I'm now 112 kilos. And so I do you do the blood work, you do all the fluid work. The fluid, I don't have to get into too much details, but the fluid. And the results came back. I had good news. Good news, actually. I didn't have diabetes. That was great. Bad news was that I was borderline diabetes. And I was also borderline high blood pressure. And I was also now at a high risk of dying of a heart attack or some kind of heart disease. I was 35 years old. And so, you know what I said? Did I make any changes in my life? No. I continued. I said to myself, that's all good. That's all good. I'm just borderline. Woohoo! I haven't got diabetes. I celebrated the fact that I was just borderline. Got to celebrate some kind of win. Yeah, I haven't got high blood pressure. I'm just borderline. And so I just continued to eat the same. I continued to live my life the same. And it's because I was asking the wrong questions in my life. I wasn't asking the right questions. And we can all ask the wrong question. In fact, this question that I'm going to talk about this morning, if I had asked this question back when I was 28 years old, if I asked this question back then today I would have a six-pack. But I've got a family pack instead. I love KFC. So good. Kai for Christians. I have to limit it now. I only just have KFC once a week now. So, no, just kidding. But here's the thing. If I've asked this question, in fact, if we all asked this question in our life, it would have saved us a lot of tears, a lot of time, a lot of money, and possibly even a lot of emotional heartache if we asked this one question. If you can think about your greatest regret, if you can think about maybe it's a night of your greatest regret, or maybe it's a season of your greatest regret, or it could have been a holiday of your greatest regret, whatever it is for you, or maybe it's some financial decision that was your greatest regret. If you had asked this question at that moment, at that time, before you made that decision, then you would have avoided your greatest regret. This question, the power of one question. Okay, you guys want to know what the question is? Yeah? Oh, well, we're going to discover it in the Word of God this morning. Okay, so if you've got some of you might have the study notes. You're probably looking at the verse, trying to find the question. And hopefully, let's see if you can work it out. We're going to be reading from the book of Ephesians, chapter 5. Now, the book of Ephesians was written by the Apostle Paul. The Apostle Paul. And if you were here last week, we spoke about Paul, as it used to be called Saul. And we know, if you were here last week, or if you weren't here last week, the Apostle Paul doesn't step into our history books as some mighty Christian, a mighty Christian warrior, a fighter for God. In fact, he steps into our history books as a hater of Christians, as a Christian hunter, if you want to put it this way, because he was a Jewish leader and he viewed Christianity as some Judaism cult, and it was his passion in life to wipe out Christianity. But in just one day, wasn't a series of days, wasn't a series of moments, but it was just one day, one defining moment for Paul, where he went from a Christian hunter to a Christ follower in one day. And Paul goes on to write just about half of the New Testament that we have today and became one of the greatest Christian leaders that we've had. And so here we are, the Apostle Paul. He's writing this letter. He's writing a letter to churches. It's titled Ephesians, the book of Ephesians, after the church in Ephesus. But when Paul wrote these letters, he intended it to be for all the churches that he had planted throughout the Mediterranean. And as we begin to read what Paul's writing, he's writing about how to live as a Christian. He said, if you're a Christian, this is how you should live. So if you're a Christian here this morning, you want to take note of what Paul is saying, right? Because he's saying, this is how, if you're a Christian, you should live like this. So you used to be in the kingdom of darkness, now you're in the kingdom of light. You used to deceive one another. You can't do that anymore. You can't deceive one another anymore. You can't mistreat anybody anymore. You can't treat people the way they treat you. You've got to treat people how God treated you through Jesus Christ. But Paul also knows that this is a tough ask because the culture that they live in is very similar to the culture we live in today. Very similar. And he knows it's a tough ask because he's asking people to live completely different lives. Completely different lives. In fact, he's asking people to take on a new lifestyle. And he knows it's hard work because he's talking about immorality. He's talking about how you talk to one another. It's totally different to the way they grew up, to how they experience life. And so it's really practical, but it's also quite hard. And so in verse 15, he kind of backs up a bit. He kind of gives them just a baby step. Just a baby step. And he comes up and he kind of asks this one question. This one question that if you apply this one question in your life, it will give you a front step forward. So are you ready? So let's take a look. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 15. So we're going to be discovering this question through these 3 verses. Paul he says this, be very careful then how you live. Be very careful then how you live. And the actual Greek translation for live is actually walk. Be very careful then how you walk. And some translations actually has the word walk. Be very careful then how you walk. Don't be careless, but be careful how you walk. In fact, the word careful is a visual term in Greek. It's a visual term. So it's kind of like, he's saying, be careful how you walk. It's as if that he's describing like a minefield. You're walking through a minefield, and just be careful where you put your step, because there's minefields all over the place, and one wrong step you can end in disastrous for you. He says, be careful. Do not be careless. Look in front of you, look behind you, look around you. Be careful how you walk. Be careful how you live as you step. So he's saying he wants you to be active in your walk. He wants to be active in how you navigate through life. And don't be careless where you step. And then he goes on. Not as unwise, but as wise. But not as unwise, but as wise. Any wise people in the room this morning? Any unwise? Who's been unwise before? Come on. Too many times, eh? Yeah. When I used to when I used to go and get takeout, I'll go out and I'll buy myself butter chicken, but that's just a starter. Butter chicken with naan bread was a starter, and then I'll give me a kebab, big kebab, and then I'll give me some dessert. This is lunch, so yeah. No wonder I have no money. So anyway, be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise. And so he equates being careful with being wise, and so therefore being unwise with being careless. Be careful how you step. Be careful as you walk through life. Then he goes on, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. Making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. What is he saying here? He's saying be careful because the current of this culture, which is the culture back in their days, very similar to the current culture today. Be careful for the current of culture, because if you're not careful, the current of culture can sweep you to a place that you don't want to be. Be careful for the current of culture relationally, because it's going to sweep you to a place relationally you don't want to be. Be careful for the current culturally or financially, because you're going to be swept to a place financially. Think, how did I get here financially? How do I end up in so much debt? How did I get here? I got swept away in the current of culture of today. Be very careful. Don't get swept away. Don't just go with the flow. It's so easy to go with the flow. And in fact, last night I was on Facebook. Is anybody else go on Facebook? I just go on Facebook just to see what's happening, news. And I come across this post on Facebook, and I was really encouraged. It's by Latoya. She's here this morning, and she's a young woman. Her and Levi's a young man. So it's great young couple. And she posted this on Facebook last night. I thought this was brilliant. I loved it. She said this: on the way back to Wintec tonight, I saw half a dozen people, all at different times, walking somewhere with alcohol. And here I am, just dropped my babies off home, and I'm off to do more study stuff. Proud of myself. I used to be one of those people. Now there's better things to do. Isn't that cool? That is so cool. That's so cool, because it's so easy, because we were like that at one point, swept away with the current of culture, sweeping us to a place we don't want to be in. Last week we spoke about the power of one moment. Do something today that your future self will thank you for. And I wrote that here. So I wrote that on Latoya's post. Do something today that your future self will thank you for. Then I got a big thumbs up emoji. And it's so easy to be swept away, isn't it? How many of us have been swept away, just got carried away with everybody else? Go with the flow. Primo. Then he goes on, verse 17. Therefore, do not be foolish. And it's almost like Paul's having to dig at those people who look for loopholes. You know, people look for loopholes. Anybody here? Don't we all look for loopholes at times? When you're playing sport, you're always looking for loopholes to try and get away with something so the ref doesn't see you. Yeah, not me, obviously, but I've heard other people. Or the law, we try to look for loopholes in the law. You know, it's 50 Ks, but I can drive at 60, right? Because there's a 10K buffer. Who drives the 10K buffer? Yeah, that loophole. Not me. I'm like 59. Loophole. We all look for loopholes. It's like, I remember walking past a drive-thru, and there was a sign saying, drive-thru only for people in vehicles. So I'm thinking, there's got to be a reason why there's a sign there, because there must have been somebody who walked through drive-thru and say, oh, I could have a Big Mac. And he said, sorry, you need to be in a vehicle. Where's the sign? I don't see a sign that there needs to be that I have to be in a vehicle. Now there's a sign. Please be in a vehicle, okay? People who look for loopholes. Christianity. How often do we look for loopholes? How far to the edge can I go without getting in trouble? Too many of us live on that edge. How far can I go? He said, therefore, do not be foolish. But, I've got a big but. I'm not talking about myself. Although I do have a family history. Therefore, do not be foolish, but, reason why I've got a big but here, but there, not there, but there, is because in the Greek there's two words to describe but. And the but that Paul uses is the biggest but. The big but. Okay. You gotta get that but out of you. He got the biggest but because he's really wants to bring a contrast here. Therefore, do not be foolish. Do not look for loopholes. Do not get carried away. Then he goes, understand what the Lord's will is. Understand what the Lord's will is. You know what the Lord's will is. Don't come up with excuses. Don't come up like, I didn't know. I didn't know if I clicked there, I would go to this site. He said, don't fool yourself. Don't fool yourself. I didn't know if I replied to this person that it will lead me on somewhere else. He said, don't fool yourself. You know the will of the Lord. Don't fool yourself. Wake up. It's time to tell yourself the truth. We'll stop. See, the biggest person that we can deceive is ourselves. So easy to deceive ourselves, right? I know I shouldn't, but I know my parents said this, but I know I shouldn't look, but we need to get our big butts out of the way, right? Get a big butt. There's a big butt there, but I cannot lie. Okay, carry on. Carry on. Just got to be careful. See, nobody goes through life planning to screw up their life, right? We just don't plan not to. We just don't plan not to. And this is the thrust of what Paul is saying. This is the question. This is the question. What is the wise thing for me to do? What is the wise thing for me to do? That's the question. And see, what I want you to do, this is your homework. We don't often give homework, but this is your homework. As you go about your normal day-to-day life, I don't want you to change the way you do your life. As you go to your normal day-to-day life, I want you to ask this question. What is the wise thing for me to do? I'm not asking you to separate from them or give back your car. All I want you to do is ask that question. What is the wise thing for me to do? If you've just been married, I used to go every year. I used to go with the boys, go into town for 2 weeks. But what's the wise thing to do? Just had a baby? What's the wise thing to do? And if you ask yourself what's the wise thing to do, and quite often, if you're a teenager, if you ask that question, quite often it could sound like what your parents said. If you're married, if you're a husband, if you ask yourself that question, it could sound exactly like what your wife said. But you're not going to admit it, right? Yeah. Or if you're a wife here and you ask yourself this question, it could sound exactly what your husband said. And if that's true, then that's a miracle, because we're not really that clued up. You need to go tell them and wrap your arms around it. Hey, you hit the jackpot. Okay, really? I said something wise? Wow, that's amazing. What's the wise thing for you to do? So here I am, 35, get this result. I didn't ask the question. 38 years old now, well, a couple of years ago, and I woke up. I stopped being foolish. I stopped the excuses, because I knew what the right thing to do, and I asked the question, what is the wise thing for me to do? And I knew the wise thing for me to do was to eat right. And I started to eat right, and I started to work out consistently. And then I set goals, and I had goals. I'm going to do the tough guy, then I was going to do the mud rush. And part of my goals was I was going to play sport again, like American football, and crazy enough to play rugby again. Had all these little goals. Because goals are important. Goals help us to do the wise thing. New Year's resolution, they're good. They set goals. What is the wise thing for me to do? Not what for anybody else to do, not for your wife or your husband, but what's the wise thing for me, you. What's the wise thing for you to do? And so anyway, when I was 39 years old, I did a test. There's a free test. Again, I love going for free stuff. And I just wanted to see if I had been training for a year, and I had got down to 102 kilos. It took me ages, but I got down to 102, lost 10 kilos. And I went for the test. And I did the blood work, I did the water works and all that kind of stuff. And then the results came back, and they said there's this percentage you needed to be in. And if you're over this percentage, which means you'll have a high risk of dying of a heart attack. And the percentage you need to be in was 15%. I was going, what's that low? Really? 15%? I have to be within 15%. Are you crazy? And they did my results. You know what result I got back? I was 35%. No, I wasn't. I was 6%. 6%, which means I had my blood pressure. Well, come on, this deserves a clap, doesn't you think? My blood pressure was good. I had no risk of diabetes. I was very low chance of dying of a heart attack. Just by applying this question in my life. What is the wise thing for me to do? And some men in here, you need to ask that question for yourself. You need to ask that question, what's the wise thing for me to do? For your health-wise, too many men are just ignoring their health. Anyway, let's what's the wise thing for me to do? You know, we don't plan to screw up our lives. We just don't plan not to. Nobody goes on a first date planning to get them pregnant or be pregnant. We just don't plan not to. Nobody goes into some financial deal to be planning to be bankrupt. We just plan not to. Nobody gets married for the first time planning for a divorce because we just don't plan not to. What is the wise thing for me to do? For me to do. Just when we pray.